r/AskReddit. Has anyone died from your school? If so, how did they die? And how did it make you feel? One of my classmates died of a ruptured aneurysm when I was 12. It was quite a shock to realize someone my age could just die. I'd lost my grandmother 3 years earlier in a car accident, but she was old. Old people are supposed to die eventually. Kids you go to class with. On the other hand, that was difficult to come to term with. Yeah dude. Some kid I worked with, super fit and healthy, only 19. He just didn't come into work one day. He'd died the previous night. No reason as far as anyone would reveal. My guess is still probably drug related. But some people have defects in their major organs that just go undiagnosed their whole lives until it kills them. My best friend committed suicide. It was devastating. He didn't say anything and he seemed so happy. He messaged me asking if I had some charcoal to barbecue the night before it happened. When they found him, he had attempted carbon asphyxiation by putting charcoal in a garbage can and burning it in his garage. That didn't work, so he tried his car too and it didn't work as well, so he shot himself. He tried getting me to bring him the charcoal he wanted to kill himself with. And my other friend was the one who bought him the shotgun rounds because he wanted to go hunting. Depression doesn't always have the most obvious signs. What made me feel the worst though is people who never talked to him. Even the super popular who had made fun of him and acted like he didn't exist went to his funeral and were telling people how they cared for him so much and wish they could have helped. It made me sick. Girl from my school got shot in the neck by her dad who was cleaning his rifle in the kitchen. Mom and dad sold the house. Pretty sure divorce happened too. They moved away. Another girl got murdered on New Year's Eve. It was freezing out. She just needed warmth. Found the wrong person to ask for help. One of my classmates drowned while trying to save his brother. His mother called me to let me know. That was one heart-wrenching conversation. RIP. But did the brother die too? No. He managed to save his brother but couldn't make it himself. When I was 14, my best friend died. We were doing sports at school and during the warm-up she fell backwards and smacked her head on the floor. She was still conscious but extremely dazed. The teacher ran to call an ambulance and I held her until they came. When she got to hospital, she was put in an induced coma to try and stop the swelling on the brain. A week later, her mom and brother had to make the decision to switch her life support machine off as there was too much brain damage. She was an amazing person and I still miss her 19 years later. The last thing she said to me was, "Is my hair still okay?" A friend of mine went on a 30-day backpacking trip to Denali with a group just after the end of his junior year. He was already an experienced winter hiker before the trip. This was a training outing for bigger hikes on bigger mountains in other parts of the world. He disappeared one night when the group was camping on near a glacier field. He was just gone. No struggle. Nothing amiss. Just gone. They never found his body. The best guess of what happened was that he went to pee or maybe get water in the middle of the night, but was so groggy he forgot to put on his crampons, slipped on the ice, and slid into one of the cracks in the glacier. Fell hundreds of feet into the almost frozen meltwater at the bottom, and eventually washed out to sea. I have always hoped that he hit his head on the ice when falling. The thought that he might have slid for a few seconds, only to feel the falling sensation for a while before understanding that he was about to die. Well, that terrifies me. I had a classmate who was the class clown and went out of his way to make people laugh. He hanged himself in 2011. Turns out his clown act was a mask to hide his depression. Sad. This is actually way more common than you'd imagine. I mean, people who pretend to be funny be a clown to mask their depression. Sorry to hear about it. Nephew of the school's owner was a close friend of mine, having asthma attacks since morning and was brought to the nearest hospital. Sadly, he didn't make it. When I saw his lifeless body, I cried my heart out. With his classmates, teachers and his grandma, I was afraid to see a dead body, but when I saw him, I felt so devastated. It's so weird seeing somebody's body who's literally not here anymore. No personality, just a body. My school had a small line of trees out the front with each tree representing a student from the school that had died. I believe most if not all were from car crashes. I still remember the silence in the classroom after one of these crashes. I didn't personally know the girl, but there were other kids that were hit pretty hard. A new girl joined my homeroom group one year and hung out with myself and my 3 other friends every recess, and we showed her around the school, taught her how the school worked and things like that. She was a boarder at the school because I think her parents worked overseas. After maybe 8 weeks at the school, she died overnight from a sudden diabetic low as she was type 1 diabetic. Going that low during the night and cancer are easily my 2 biggest fears. The idea I could be fine when I sleep and just be gone the next is terrifying. Someone I didn't know personally had a car accident and we've all heard from school. However, later 2 young boys came to our class and told us a nice story about him, and then our teacher was trying to hide her tears. In 3rd grade, a girl in my class was hit by a car while trick-or-treating on Halloween night. Her parents were devastated. One day she was there and the next she wasn't. I couldn't imagine dying on Halloween. My town had college kids manage traffic between cars and kids the past 2 years near the college and school area. I graduated high school 13 years ago. There's been a lot of deaths, especially considering how small of town my high school was in. While I was in high school there were some kids who died in car accidents. More car accidents after I graduated too. One guy I knew drank himself to death. Another girl was beaten to death by her boyfriend. There's been at least 1 suicide I know of. The worst was a personal friend of mine who died from a heart problem while he was driving from the UGA campus in Athens, GA to my hometown. His car went off the road and he was found dead days later. I think he might have survived for a while stuck in there because they found pings from his phone off of a cell tower. Isn't it easy to determine if someone drowned or not though? I thought you just need to check if there's water in their respiratory tract. Wait, was this outside St. Louis too? 3 years ago? Lost a few casual acquaintances to suicide. In 2014, a friend of mine who was like a baby brother passed away following a bike accident. He was the sweetest person I've ever known, with a smile that lit up our entire day. He was on ventilator support for 2 weeks, and they gave up trying to revive him. I heard the news of his death on the day I started my new job and I just remember collapsing to the floor and wailing with absolute anguish. His birthday is day after tomorrow. He would have turned 25. Edit. Thank you all for the kind words. I'm absolutely blessed and grateful to have gotten to know a person like him in this lifetime. There was not one person he met who he failed to bring a smile to. He made everyone fall in love with him. We all have a lot to learn from him, regardless of whether there is a heaven. He definitely made us feel like we were already there. To everyone on this thread sharing his birthday, happy birthday in advance. Cherish every moment. : Many suicides in my school, but none from my grade. However, our sophomore year we had 2 classmates who got in a fight about an old paintball match. So one of them shoots the other with his dad's shotgun. It was no accident either. When the details were released, he confessed to grabbing the gun, pointing it, click, he pumped it, click, he then reached into a dresser, grabbed a shell, pump, bang. Our friend was halfway out the sliding door when police arrived. The murderer was sitting on the couch, eating a hot pocket. They were both 16 years old. Edit. I realized I missed the second half of the question. I was singing in a concert when I found out, and I couldn't believe it when I heard it. My route home just happened to take me by his house, and there were 7 police vehicles in my small town. Basically the entire city police. And I was shell shocked and broke down when I got home. The next day seemed so surreal. Every class was just trying to talk about what a guy the victim was. No real learning happened that day. Every hallway had kids hugging and crying. We have at least 1 student who commits suicide every year at my school. I had just started university. Every class I would sit next to this one person. We had a lot in common and became quite close friends in just a couple of months. There was a car accident. She died instantly and her boyfriend who was driving died on the way to the hospital. I hadn't read the news that day. Another friend from class called me and I heard something was wrong. I can still hear his voice saying, "Friend is dead." I opened the news on my phone and I saw her face on the front page. I screamed crying. I couldn't breathe. They were both only 19. I went to her and her boyfriend's joint funeral. Her mother threw flower petals as their caskets were lowered into the ground. You can imagine this as a beautiful scene. But she was screaming, crying, Her husband had to hold her back. I've been to quite a lot of funerals, but this is by far the most heartbreaking. It's been 5 years. I still see her sometimes, like someone who has her hair color, or eyes, or voice, or laugh, or says things she would say. I sometimes wish I could have switched places with her. She had so much life, so much energy, so much happiness, and I've spent most my life suicidal. One of the things keeping me alive now is the feeling that I have to live for her. My class has lost quite a few to suicide and a couple to ODs, but the one that sticks with me most actually happened once we graduated. One of my classmates got married and moved to Missouri with her husband. They quickly had 4 kids. I watched as her life progressed on Facebook and I'm genuinely happy for her. They're getting ready for a vacation. They never make it. All 6 die in a car crash on the way there. Her husband, and her 4 kids under 6. The youngest one only 8 months old. Maybe it's the fact that the young kids died that gets me the most. But I remember how weird it was after the fact, because I'd seen her posts a lot as they prepared for the trip. Then suddenly, they all just stopped. The most amazing math teacher started missing days, escalating taking leaves for doctor's appointments because of cataracts. One day he left early and never came back. It turned out that the doctor's appointment were trips to radiation and chemotherapy and that his cataracts were tumors in his eyes that had metastasized into stage 4 brain, spine and liver cancer. He was an angel of a human. Every time the class had to take tests he'd give out dumb lollipops. He could have stopped teaching and taken sick leave. He could have used his life savings to travel a farewell life vacation, but instead, even dying, he spent his last months, weeks, down to days teaching his students. He was a true hero. A lot of memories of him make me cry, but none compare to the 5 minutes before he left as the principal took over the class. He stood at the front of the classroom and said, "I'm going to be taking some time off. You might get some sad news. Sometimes the world isn't the fairest place, like sometimes how your parents might blame you for something your sibling did. But please remember it's not any of your faults. Please don't be scared or sad. It's a happy vacation with my mom and I know it's coming. While I'm gone, please promise me something. Promise you'll be good." The whole class promised. He gave us each a hug and left. 3 days later he succumbed to cancer in his sleep. Even now, in our 20s, of the classmates I still talk to, none of them can eat dumb lollipops without crying. I grew up in a bad neighborhood. Sadly, I lost a few of the kids in grade school from shootings or something like that because they were caught in the crossfire. Was school year 99/0 Dart. The kid was in my 3rd period science class. Popular kid. Had plenty of friends. Car wreck. He died. Plenty of people were sad about it. I was not. That kid was a bully to me. I'm not saying I was happy he died, but I was happy I didn't have to worry about getting bullied for the rest of the school year. Kind of ducked up. Hot. When I started high school, I was the new girl attending school in a town where everyone grew up together. Nobody really spoke to me except Patrick. He was my first friend and the first person to make me feel like I belonged. We drifted apart over the years, largely due to him missing school a lot and having different classes. Eventually, he moved to a different school district and we didn't talk anymore during our senior year. Patrick took his life shortly after his birthday before graduation. While him and I weren't close in the end, he will always be very special to me because of the role he played in my life during a difficult time. I just wish I was there for him when he needed it. My senior died in an accident. An animal came in front of his vehicle. Didn't know him personally, but I guess he was a nice guy and it was sad. Many people and teachers cried that day. A kid I didn't know very well died because he tried to avoid hitting an animal. He was on his way to school with his sister and swerved to avoid it. Their car went into a 5-foot ditch. I remember his sister died on impact and he was in a coma for a few days before passing. I've always been taught to not swerve and to just hit the animal. There's a lot of deer in our area, because you might go into another lane or into a ditch and cause more damage to yourself or others. His death really made that lesson stick for me. We went to primary school, intermediate school, and then high school together, and then we worked together and hung out together. She got killed by a drunk driver 5 years ago in August, a few weeks before her 19th birthday. Her passing broke me like nothing ever had, like no one ever has. Tore me apart from the inside out. Her funeral was a rough. Lots of people who I hadn't seen in years came. Several of our old teachers attended, as well as the headmaster and deputy. Pretty sure there's a plaque at that school now. The after party was one fueled by fast cars, fireworks, and donuts. A bunch of us had planned a roadie in August to go to the site where she died. Most of us haven't been there yet, but Corona has probably put a stop to that. In college, some kid was brutally murdered in his dorm room. The kid that was murdered was dating the murderer's ex. The murderer stabbed him in his dorm room like 30 times in the neck while his roommates were in the other room. When they came out and saw what was happening, they started fighting with him, trying to get him off, and the kid ran. He only wanted to kill the guy his ex was dating. He then hid out in the nature preserve on campus for a few days. The night that it happened, no one could find him. There were rumors that he was in the library and everyone was freaking out and terrified. Obviously, I was thankfully not on campus. I stayed at my boyfriend's house. The campus was locked down for like a week since they couldn't find him. They had police trailers set up in the campus's main parking lot and had basically every single police officer on campus. The police presence was still pretty heavy the next year. They eventually did find him, but the murder weapon has still never been found. There was also a kid who was tripping on some drugs and jumped out his dorm room window. In high school, there was a kid in my Spanish class who drank too many Red Bulls and when he was sleeping, had a brain aneurysm. The kid who jumped from his window and from high school didn't really affect me, but walking on campus when there was an active murder investigation with the murderer still not found and rumored to be hiding in the campus preserve was definitely nerve-wracking to say the least. We were all on edge. My ex died of brain cancer at 29 or so. I was sad for his daughter and wife. Another friend committed suicide last summer. Never knew he suffered from depression. He was always acting silly, but I guess that's how he hid it. Comments like this make me want to check on my friends and make sure they're okay. I encourage you guys to do the same. Not trying to be cheesy, but some people just need somebody to tell them it's okay and you're there for them. Several. The weirdest and saddest was a boy who died in 2nd grade out on the recess field. Just dropped dead. It was Halloween, so rumors raged around our town that he was poisoned by candy. It ended up to be a heart issue. 2 boys in my year group committed suicide. Not sure of the details, and didn't want to ask, in their final year of school. 5 months apart from each other. The second boy died just a week or 2 before we finished lessons, after which we would then come back for our final exams the following term. I wasn't close with either of them, as they were usually a part of the wrong crowd, which I avoided, but a lot of my friends were. So, instead of feeling sad about the passing of my young friends like others in my year group, I was left feeling regretful that I didn't try to get to know them more before they died. A girl from my school died of skin cancer. Tragic, and really affected our small community. Loads of fundraisers when she was alive, and so much support to her family after her passing. You never want this happen to anyone, but her family were not nice people. Super rude. I never understood why her mom and surviving siblings continued to lay on the porch and tan every summer. Still take donations though. We had a couple kids in high school die of cancer. One was a friend of mine. He and I weren't super close, though we did hang out outside of school occasionally and sat next to each other in band. There was one girl in our class who was not a nice person, just very outspoken and abrasive and said a lot of really rude stuff. At his funeral, she was up at the front of the church sobbing and telling people how close they were. I believe she even got up and said some things about him during the service. When the minister asked if people wanted to share any memories, it always seemed like a ploy for attention, because those of us who actually hung out with him weren't even sure she could point him out in a crowd before he died. His family and closest friends were sitting there barely holding it together, so her very dramatic weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth seemed pretty disrespectful. A few from drunk driving accidents, one from cancer, one hit and run. I didn't know them personally, but it was sad that they had friends who were very upset. I sat next to a girl in senior Spanish, and one Friday we teamed up for a group project. After having a fun class period and making plans for next week, we both went home after school. That night she was hit by a car while jogging. A car hit her so hard she flew a bit and was hit by another car. Died immediately. My class didn't find out until Monday morning when our teacher shared the news and cried uncontrollably. I had to sit next to the empty desk the rest of the year. I later worked with one of her best friends who told me some good memories about her. School put up a memorial and dedicated the yearbook. She was so vibrant and fun. I'm sad I didn't get to know her better. Guy was the same age as me. It was our final year, maybe 3 months before we were due for exams. He was cycling to his girlfriend's house, not wearing a helmet. While crossing a bridge collided with a car, went flying into the rails, died that evening. One rumor was he'd been showing off, weaving between the cars, misjudged it and it cost him. Driver didn't stop. Don't think he was ever found. I didn't particularly like the guy, but it still was a terrible thing to happen. I had a close friend in primary school. He had leukemia and stopped attending school in grade 6. Lost touch with the friend group and saw him attending high school in year 8. He passed away later that year. I was really sad. I had a picture he drew traced for me in primary that I couldn't throw out. If I found the picture now, I'm in my 30s, I still wouldn't throw it out. Back when I was in HS in the late 90s, we had an open campus. It was pretty common for kids to leave for lunch and go to Taco Bell or something nearby. One day, a group of friends gets in their car and heads out. All 4 of these guys were jockish types. Pretty popular to boot. Anyway, lunch comes and goes. In 5th period and a girl comes into the classroom sobbing inconsolably. Turns out the bros were trying to act like badasses speeding down an arterial road on the way to lunch. Lost control and slammed into a pole. One of the kids was flung from the car and torn to literal shreds. The people you'd expect to be grieving grieved. Everyone else kinda went on about their day. I hear the campus got changed to a closed campus the next year. A kid had some kind of kidney disease in elementary school and needed a transplant. The parents rejected doing it because of religious reasons. Absolutely senseless death. This should be illegal. Religious practices you force on your kids should never get in the way of medical treatment. As an adult, sure, go ahead and let yourself die if you choose, but this is just so sad. Imagine being the doctor who can help but the parents won't allow it. A girl, 13, I went to middle school with was strangled to death by her boyfriend, 18. She was reported missing for months. And I remember thinking she had probably just run away from home because she was kind of a troublemaker and didn't have the best relationship with her parents. Her body was found by a jogger under a bridge less than a few miles away from home. It was so bizarre hearing about the state of decomposition of her body while thinking about the girl I'd had gym class with just a year prior. We had always been friendly acquaintances before, and then she was gone forever. That realization of mortality really stuck with me. In 1998, when I was a sophomore, a 15-year-old classmate shot herself in the head. She used to dress very masculine and had short hair and was apparently transgender. But this was 1998, and most people really didn't understand transgender kids. I've read news articles from her parents and family saying that she was tortured at school. I don't remember ever speaking to her. I didn't know her. We were a class of about 350. In the immediate aftermath, I remember some rude people making jokes about it, but it wasn't really something that I heard mention of in the following years at school. For example, there wasn't anything special in our senior yearbook or anything like that. I was a very melancholy 15-year-old and I remember it making me feel sad and I wrote a poem about it. Looking back now and knowing what I know about her now, I do feel sad about the whole situation. But I didn't know her or her family or friends well enough to actually be personally affected. A group of guys from our school got hit by a truck last July. One of the guys died. The rest lived, but you can see the trauma on them even almost a year later. Just to be clear, they weren't drunk and weren't the ones at fault. The crash site is like an intersection thing, but it's on a sort of top of a hill with buildings blocking some of the road from being visible. A teacher died. I don't remember, but it was likely some sickness and I didn't feel much other than hoping the best for her and her family, and she was a nice later. One was thrown from a horse. One overdosed. One sudden death, likely arrhythmia. This brought back a lot of feelings. My sophomore year of high school, I met this boy who also has red hair. I thought he was pretty cool, and his mom gave me a ride home one time after school. He had some problems with his back, and he had to wear a huge brace. He didn't have it on when I first met him, and I think I asked him what was wrong, but of course I don't remember. He didn't have a backpack, instead, wheeled around this briefcase thing. I never really developed a crush on him, but I did look forward to seeing him, and sometimes I'd wait for him in the hallway where I'd seen him before to say hello to him. He had a very contagious smile, but oftentimes he wasn't there. I don't know if maybe he just took a different way to class those few days I did see him, or if he wasn't at school those days. Anyway, my junior year my family moved to a different state halfway through the year, and I started the second half of my semester there. I really didn't have many friends at my old school, but I said bye to everyone I knew there, I think. Well, I didn't really keep up with anybody because I didn't feel the need to, and I found out that the redheaded kid killed himself because my sister-in-law told me. She said, "Do you know his name?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I remember him." And that was it. His life was over. It hit me really hard because I know what it was like to be suicidal. I never knew him very well, but I wish I would have. A friend of mine from high school passed away when she went to college, probably about 5 years later. She was type 1 diabetic and had been using injections her whole life. We'd have sleepovers and stuff and it was just normal. Anyway, she went off to college and I was studying elsewhere on a work placement type thing, and the news came that she passed away cause she hadn't taken her insulin for a long time. I didn't go to her funeral cause it was on a working day and I didn't think they'd let me have the time off, and then one of my colleagues, mutually at the same high school, was off that day. It saddened me so much that I hadn't just gone. Thankfully there was a memorial birthday party for what would have been her 21st which I was able to go to. The hardest part is my high school best friend became best friends with her in college. She told me at the party she felt responsible for her death cause she didn't step in and make her take her medication or try push her to do it. I feel bad that she lives with that weight on her shoulders now and just hope that she has someone who can help her work through it. Within 1 year of graduation 12 guys died from my class. Most were motor vehicle accidents but 4 were the bombing of the Marine barracks in Lebanon. The 6th of December, 2001, when we were 15, my best friend slit her wrists. It was horrendous. I had found out that I was pregnant 2 weeks before, and her death consumed me. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't exist, not without her. If I wasn't pregnant I would have ended it then. She was my life. It has been 18 years and I still think of her every day. I have a tattoo on my foot to commemorate her, and my youngest son's middle name is the male form of her name. My niece was due on the 15th anniversary of her death. It jiffed to the 4th of December, and I went into my study and started talking to my photo of her, begging for this child not to be born on the 6th. 20 minutes later my brother called me, saying that Emma's waters had broken. I am truly thankful for that. One of our supervisors died due to a heart attack. Before he died, he sent a message to the school group saying, "I will always love you guys." He was found dead after the message. What confuses me the most is that he died in a heart attack and said, "I will always love you guys," before he died. That all sounds like he knew he will die soon. I don't know if there's an explanation to this. We found out about his death on Tuesday, then the funeral would be on Wednesday, so school was off at that day. What hurts the most is that some students were really happy because there wasn't school the second day. Some even said, "Thank you for dying. I don't have to go to school tomorrow." That was the worst thing I ever heard someone say. One in a car wreck. A passenger without a seatbelt and was ejected through the windshield. 3 suicides. All 3 different ways. And 1 OD from meth. Of all of those 2 were my friends. The wreck and a suicide. HS years 98-2001. Sad of course. In elementary school we had a student with a degenerative disease. She was in a fancy wheelchair and in 5th grade she passed. I don't know her well but we all planted roses for her. I know there were lots of suicides at my school but I didn't know any of the students. Young guy at my school went missing one night. He was 18 years old. His family was distraught. Farmer found him in his cornfield about 3 days later. Apparently, he had been geocaching at 2 in the morning when his heart stopped. Whoa, You made it to the end, you're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.